Yeah, we just have to be sure that our knowledge comes from scientific research, which we bring together with practitioner experience, maybe evidence from the organization, and evidence from stakeholders. Those are really the four sources of evidence. Okay. So with that backdrop, evidence-based management, just introducing what it is, we can start to talk about theory, because theory is what guides us in any scientific field. Similarly, in organizational behavior, we have well-established theories. We have theories that are fairly new and not so well-established, you know, and then, of course, we have a couple of rubbish theories which have been left at the wayside, like any field, okay? But what is a theory? What is a theory? Anybody wants to venture a guess?
It's kind of like a assumption, like like one or two or three joined together, that kind of stuff, of an idea of like a certain topic or anything like that.
An idea? Okay, somebody said an idea. You started to say something in detail about maybe something being related to something. I think now they said an idea. Daniela said an idea why something happens. A set of ideas with the intent of trying to explain something. Interesting, yeah. Yeah, you're getting, you know, you're a proven concept, or I would say proven, a strong word, or I would say, no, proven. But I like where you're going. I like where you're going. Set of principles. Good. Prove is a very strong word. And I like that you mentioned it, because we often think that if something has enough scientific evidence behind it, it has been proven. And that's okay to say in general, but prove is, because we deal with probabilities in science, prove is often considered in the scientific community too strong a word to use, right? Because we're going based on probabilities. But generally speaking, I understand what you're saying, and I get you, right? Set of principles, put into practice. So good. You're all on the right track. Nobody said a guess. Nobody said you know, I like when you see it used in movies, and the dictionary definition of theory is really something more along the lines of a guess or even a hypothesis, right? A conjecture. But a theory is more than that. And you all are clearly, there's a reason why you all are in this master's program. You're all on the right track. So a theory is a collection of assertions about how and why certain concepts are related, right? And the conditions under which they should and should not be related. So a collection of assertions that specify how and why certain concepts are related. And I'm recording this anyway, right? And the conditions under which they should and should not be related. So, so when I think Aditya was actually mentioning something along those lines, you know, reasons as to why certain things might be related. And if we go back to our example earlier, we were talking about visionary leadership being related to customer service. We were starting to get the beginnings of a theory there, but was it a good theory? No, absolutely not, right? We were just starting with an idea. So theory usually starts with an idea, right? As you all said, it usually starts with this idea that here is why A is related to B, and perhaps here are some conditions under which A might not be related to B, or in which A might be more strongly related to B than in normal conditions. That is what a theory is about. But is it a good theory when we have specified it? Could I just come to class today and specify and say, well, guys, I have a good theory today. You know, I have a, in fact, let me show you one. Let me show you one. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now, and hopefully Zoom doesn't go bananas. All right, let's see. Okay, let me share something else with you. I'll come back to it. Correlation. Let's go with that. Yeah, all right. Let's do it. I was printing this. All right. So I came to class and I said, you know, hey guys, I have a good theory today called tall person heavy theory. And here's the assertion. So I'm making some assertions. I say, well, tall person heavy, or TPH theory, is based on the assertion that The taller you are, the more Anthony, help me out here. The longer your I'm making up things. The longer your bones are, the more muscles you have distributed across these bones, and so on and so on, right? So it doesn't matter. Obviously, my assertions are not factual. I'm just using this as an example, okay? All right. So I have a theory. And what I do next, if you recall the diagram, I can't share two screens at the same time, but if you recall the diagram, usually is that a good theory? If I just come and tell it to the class and say, look, this is the theory. It's good theory, accept it. It's scientific theory. You can apply that now to everyday life. Tall person heavy theory. Yes? No? What do you think? Is it good? It's well established? You all seem skeptical. Why? It's a good theory, not so?
We're waiting for Dr. Anthony to confirm.
Yes. Anthony, you're muted. You're muted. All right. Yeah, he says yes. It's a sound theory. He agrees with me. So yeah, he confirmed. But you obviously know, right? You know, I can't just come. Nobody can just come and specify a theory and it becomes good theory. You start with the origins. You start with an idea, and then you have to do what? You hypothesize something. So based on these assertions that the taller you are, the heavier you are, I can hypothesize then that maybe there is a positive relationship between height and weight. All right, a simple hypothesis. Positive relationship means that they both move in the same direction. If you're not aware, you're probably learning. Some of you may be learning stats for the first time. Sorry, and you may be learning that positive means that as height goes up, weight goes up. As height goes down, weight goes down. That's what positive means, right? They move in the same direction, okay? All right. So I have a theory, and then I from that idea about why height is related to weight, I then hypothesize something. Okay? Thanks, Collis, for joining us on the camera. Appreciate it. And what I can do next, if you recall the diagram I had up, is what? Collect some data. So I thought, okay, here are the origins. I'm not sure why Alexa thought I was talking to. Here are the origins of this theory. I want to collect some data. So I came to class today and I said, hey, my wonderful friends in MGMT 6314, are you all willing to share some information about let me pull up the chat. Why is Zoom treating me? Okay. Yeah. Let me collect some data from you all without ethical approval, because who wants to go through that process, about your height and weight. Oh, and you have to go through that process, huh? Don't take me on. All right, about your height and weight. So I say, okay, anybody wants to volunteer their height and weight for me, because I need to collect data to determine if my hypothesis is correct. And as simple as this example is, this is a very condensed version of what you'll be doing for your thesis anyway, right? But many of you will, unless you do qualitative research. Okay.
All right. So Dr. Paul,
Paul is
right. So I like to say my weight, my height is 5'9", right, 5 feet 9 inches, and my weight is at this point in time is about 200 pounds. And based on the theory, it doesn't really add up. So one of the things I wanted to throw in there, and I don't know if it's too early. What about culture and your demographic location or where you live? What part does that have to do with your height and your weight?
Good.
And if that is not being looked at as well.
Absolutely, Collis. You know, but you're spoiling my theory, Collis. You know, you're raising valid points. I don't want to hear that just yet. You know, those are all valid points. So yeah, no, absolutely taking your point into consideration. This is something I want to look at after for sure, because we'll get to those questions, and it's good to show that you're thinking ahead about what else could affect the relationship between height and weight. But remember, I only have one data point, right? Who knows? Maybe I might still be right. Let's see, Collis, right? But no, yeah, I'll come back to your point for sure. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? A second person wants to volunteer?
5'11", 175.
175, right? Oh, wait, is that
So we have some
5'11"?
contributions in the chat.
5 feet 11 inches.
Sorry, tall Anthony. Okay. Oh, chat. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
chat.
Collis, I think there's a TV in your background. Is it okay if I mute you for now and unmute you when I come back to the
Oh.
question? Okay, thanks. All right. So I'm seeing some contributions in the chat. Thanks for that. Thanks for the heads up. 65, 190, 61, 200, 60, 67, 186, 64, 200. Okay, this is interesting. All right. Where did I reach? 60, 66, 195. Um, 66, 67, 160. You all are around the same height, man. All right. 60, 63. $150. Wait, no, 60, yeah, 63, 150. Um, 69, 168. Okay, I'll just take that one then. All right. Amazing. This is a very unique class, I must say. You all are unique in every way. You know, I forgot to mention that sort of side notes. This is the first time I've actually been teaching this course in semester 1. So that's why last week I was surprised when the class was that quiet. Is really that I've always taught this course in semester 2. So that explains why last week was so quiet. I know I said that when I came to class and I just realized why or when I went home that day. All right. Okay. 6. Did I get this correct? Please verify if there's anything I had incorrect for me, please. This is interesting, very interesting. So, all right. All right. So, okay, I have a sample size of 10. And this is the first time I've done this exercise and not received a positive correlation. What are you guys doing to me? It's amazing. You're almost guaranteed to get a positive correlation in a sample of 10. Of course, there are going to be exceptions, and the p-value is not significant, right? I don't think it. All right. You don't worry too much about this. But what I wanted to point out was the correlation coefficient negative. Negative meaning that if it was significant and negative, and at some point it was. In fact, if I were to add, say, the 5, Letitia, right? I think 65. So let me just replace this with the person who responded last, right? 65, 180. Okay, but it's still negative. Yeah. The point I was going to make is that most cases you'll find this positive, right? But in this case, it was actually negative, not significant, right? Too small, 0.07, but there are some implications here for us. Okay, first of all, hypothetically speaking, right? I'll come back to the negative score just now. If it was positive and significant, which it has always been in the past, and then I'll come to our score, right? Then that would mean that as height goes up, weight goes up. As height goes down, weight goes down. There's a positive relationship. It was significant, not this time, but in the past. And therefore, in those past classes, would I have said that I now have a good theory? That the data has verified my hypothesis? Is it that I now have a good theory? Is that enough to establish tall person heavy theory as a good theory, TPH? Because I went through the entire step, right? I had a theory, an idea. I did what? I hypothesized. I created a hypothesis, collected data, verified my hypothesis, and now I'm back to this theory. Is the theory good? If assuming that I got that positive relationship, just ignoring these findings for now. and I'll come back to the findings. I just want to change what I'm sharing. Anybody? Let's see, where is it? Where's my Prezi? Nobody? Anybody has an idea? Here we go. Yeah. So you saw what I did there, right? We had an idea, 12-person heavy theory, hypothesized there's a positive relationship between height and weight, collected data, and assuming I'm using two scenarios. In the first scenario, the data supported it, it verified the hypothesis, and I got back my theory. So I now say, tall man heavy theory, great theory, guys. Publish it in a scientific paper, get it peer reviewed, and everybody's like, hey, hooray, Paul, celebrate, party. And Anthony can all apply it in his practice. Yes, no, what?
Yes.
Anthony. Right. What do we have? What am I missing? Even if it was supported by that, and you should realize it right away when you realize that that I got a negative relationship just now. That first of all, I collected data from how many persons? 10. Very small sample size, right? Yeah, I can't even begin to start having a good theory yet. That mightn't even be enough for a pilot study. It's so small, all right? 10 persons. If, assuming I collected data from 500 master's students, and I'm saying that very specifically, 500 master's students, and it all showed a positive relationship, do I now have a good theory in OB? Well, a good theory, not OB. This is not OB. Do I now have a good theory?
Maybe not.
Why not?
Because the 500 people, because they're all master students, they may have a level of education and sophistication that makes them have certain types of habits. And so your sample is still too restricted.
Too skewed. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So 500 master students, that might all be from a specific demographic, as you're saying. And they might all have a certain background, similar backgrounds in terms of their education, similar levels of intelligence, right? Like torture, that kind of thing. You agree with me? So, the point is that it's skewed. It's not taking into account the overall population. Of course, as well, for it to be a good theory, that sort of study should not be conducted by just one person. I would need to replicate it numerous times. And this is why you saw those arrows going around here. It doesn't stop here at any point. The theory has to be, the studies have to be replicated across different samples, different researchers, different techniques besides just a correlation. And as Colin said, I would have to start including different control variables, taking into account conditions under which they may not be related or may be related more strongly and so on. So those are some of the things I'll have to start taking into account to establish good theory. I may have to start developing other hypotheses that height is related to weight positively, but more so in countries where there's a greater height distribution, or perhaps there are different eating habits, or I might have to control for certain factors. All of those things will start to come into account. And what that means is that the theory will start developing over numerous studies, and it may become better, it may become a good theory, or further studies might show that it is not a good theory. And it has a lot of faults in it. The data doesn't support it in certain studies and so on, and the evidence might be mixed. So the point I'm trying to show you is that for every theory you cover, not just in OB, in any master, in any course you do in our program, in any program, this is how we go about establishing good theory from not so good theory, and theories that are left at the wayside in any field. Okay. In our case, though, just going back to the second finding, we found a negative relationship. Assuming this was significant, what it would mean is that as height goes up, your weight went down. And that is, generally in the population, we find a correlation coefficient of about 0.44. We found negative, right? Which I found very startling. But I have to keep in mind, this is a sample size of 10. If I went through the entire class, it may have more than likely been positive. But my very small sample size could change the findings so easily. If I go back to that example and I change 1 or 2 data points, I'm pretty sure I can get let me change a data point for you very quickly. 6. 72, 78, right?
Change number 1.
Yeah, well, actually, I just put in my height and weight. Yeah, maybe number 1. Yeah, good point. If I just put in my height and weight for number 1, I know y'all can't see it, but I'll just put it up. Put it. Yeah, it will change to positive because the sample is so small. One person has the power to change the correlation coefficient. That's when you know it's a poor study. Okay. So that's the point I was trying to get to. One study isn't enough. A small sample, absolutely not enough. One study is not enough. Multiple studies can be enough, but they need to, of course, be more fine-tuned and take into account other things. Okay? Any questions on how we know things about OB and how we develop theories in this field of OB? So I want you to sort of have that idea then that theories are the best representations of reality that we have. The same goes for theories in physics. Nobody would tell me the theory of gravity is a poor theory. There's enough evidence out there over multiple studies to show that the theory of gravity works. Similarly, Kurt Lewin once said there's nothing more practical than good theory. Such a powerful statement because data by itself can be interpreted in different ways at times, and without a proper understanding of theory, we can often misinterpret data and find what we call spurious correlations and so on. So just keep that in mind, okay? We need to have theory as the guiding factor, even when we collect data throughout, okay? Any questions, any concerns, anything you're not understanding? Okay, so I kind of went through this already. To test our theory, we gather data. I'm not going to kind of go over it, them use variation. We sometimes use variations of the correlation coefficient to test hypotheses. Sometimes we use experimental designs, which is very common in medicine, of course. Not as common in management, but it's being increasingly used because that is the gold standard for testing causation, okay? We use experimental designs with control groups and intervention groups and so on. Okay. Right. One point I should probably mention here, and I think this is what I was mentioning just now, you'll learn a bit more about that in stats, of course, is that meta-analytical findings are the strongest form of evidence that we have in our field and in any field, really, from medicine to education to management. So that's where we really look for the strongest findings to support our decisions and to answer questions. We look at meta-analytic findings because that's what meta-analyses do, and I have one published actually. If you look at my scholar profile, you'll see one. What we do there is we gather the data from multiple studies and group them into one study in order to form a more powerful conclusion about the relationships between concepts in our field. All right. So with that said, right, would you, and don't look at any of the question, in fact, let me move away from it because people like to look. Would you, is there any instance where you would not apply scientific evidence? If we know, right, and just to sort of give you a baseline for where we're at right now. If you know that in making decisions in the workplace, you can supplement your intuition, your practical experiences, and enhance that considerably by using scientific research. Wouldn't you do that? Well, everybody, wouldn't you do that? All right, yeah. First, let me ask a basic question. Wouldn't you do that? Wouldn't you want to supplement your intuition and practical experience with a wealth of scientific research for good theories? Because of course, there's nothing more practical than good theory. I think that's a baseline, right? I think we can establish that, right? We would want to do that. That's the purpose of a master's degree in the first place, right? All right. If evidence contradicts our views, this is a tricky one. Okay, so say we are faced with a question in the workplace and we think we know the answer based on our experiences, which are always going to be limited compared to rigorous scientific studies. But we think we have the answer, and then we find a few meta-analyses showing something that contradicts our belief. Are you willing to change your beliefs? given evidence, new evidence, and evidence from meta-analytic studies showing otherwise? That is the most important question.
It depends.
It depends. Talk to me. Let me hear.
Well, again, it depends on how deep the belief is. So for example, if you're a religious person and something, there was something some theory that went contrary to your deep spiritual belief, you may be inclined not to pay attention to it. So for example, you see people who and this doesn't even have to do with religious belief. You see people
Right.
whose pastors told them that COVID injection, COVID vaccination was dangerous, and just because my pastor said, people decided not to take the vaccination. So I'm just giving an example. So I think that
Exactly.
if it depends on how deep the belief is,
Right.
so that could influence whether or not people will accept, something that has been confirmed by even meta-analysis.
Correct. So, and thank you for that comment, Omabitse. So, in the workplace, so all right, and fantastic comment, and I wanna come back to that comment in particular. In the workplace context, though, if it's in a work environment where you're dealing with people and their behaviors, managing their attitudes and behaviors, how many of you here would say that yes, you would be willing to change an approach or perhaps use a different approach that may be different to what you're accustomed doing, right? Or may even contradict, might be a bit strong, but contradict what you're doing in the workplace based on, in light of new evidence from meta-analytic studies and perhaps even evidence from the organization itself. So you collected data from the organization, it corroborated findings from meta-analytic studies and say, hey, this is the best way to engage our employees. Would you be willing to try that, even if it's different to something that you did before? I think in the workplace, I think it seems a bit easier, right? But Omabitse's point stands that there are some people in the workplace that even though all of us here, I suppose that with certain backgrounds, different level, generally higher level of intelligence than the general public, as master students, you tend to find you're higher on that curve, right? The normal curve. You would be more willing, perhaps more open to trying things where there's a wealth of evidence showing that it could work. The reality, though, is that it could be very difficult using these when people have strongly held beliefs in the workplace, like what Omabitse was talking about. People do, and those beliefs are sometimes very strong, similar to these religious beliefs. In fact, I was going to share a similar example, actually, just to illustrate that point. It's an example that is not meant to, obviously, as Omabitse was saying, it's not meant to attack any religion or say it's the wrong way to do it. It's just showing you how difficult it can be for people, all right? I don't want us to take it for granted and say, okay, Paul is showing us this new approach where, or this approach I wasn't aware of, where we can gather systematic, systematic research in the field of OB and apply it at work. That's going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. In many cases where you have persons who have been there for years, accustomed to doing things one way, and then we try to get them to change, it can be difficult. And how difficult you want to relate to it, I can show you. If I were to tell you, raise a question like this, right? And this is not, again, I'm not providing an answer or anything on this. This is not meant to be anything religious or anything like that, or non-religious even, right? Do intercessory prayers work? And persons say, well, yes, they work. And then I say, hey, well, here's, there are meta-analytic studies showing, well, they're not working here, they're not working here. This is across numbers of studies, hundreds of participants. And I bring that to class and I say, guys, here are the meta-analytic studies. Will you now stop praying? Would you? No, right? I don't think you would. And I don't expect that you would, right? Because as Ogmagbit says in, these are strongly held beliefs. No, exactly. And that's why I want you to realize it like this. Even though this is a bit more of a deep-seated belief over years, it's not too far from what these managers and CEOs and persons who have been ingrained in a workplace for years, sometimes decades, have been accustomed to. It has almost become like religious beliefs to them. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but those beliefs have become almost as strong as these beliefs, and therefore it's difficult to break these habits, even when you come with your fancy meta-analytic studies to say, here are the best ways to do these things. They believe in it so strongly that they will say, well, no, I've been using balanced scorecard for years, and I plan to still continue using my balanced scorecard. Sure, your meta-analytic studies show a superior way of goal-setting theory, but I believe in balanced scorecard. That is my God, in the workplace, right? If you understand what I'm saying, not literally. But that's kind of how hard it is for them. So I don't want you to get the impression that while there's a superior approach, that it will be easy to implement. I just want you to know how difficult it can be. All right. Good. I'll give you a short break just now, but there was just one, before, let me just close off this area and we'll take a short break so I can show you how to apply it very practically after, okay? So in the last 25 years then, evidence has become central to effective practice in fields such as medicine, as we said, education, policing, and psychology. In management, though, it's something that's still growing, it's still developing. We of course have to be leading the field as researchers and practitioners. We have to make that push for the field, right? Over the past few years, things have been changing gradually, though, and I'm seeing it even locally, thankfully. We have been adopting a more evidence-based mindset in our country, which is good to see. And it's the idea that Ogbangbechi raised earlier, before we take the break, about consultants. I like to raise that point because, of course, you are going to have some of them who are just repeating things from popular books and catchy terms and the marketing hype behind them, and just repeating it and having their sessions. There's a big difference. There are those consultants, and then there are the ones that are evidence-based. If you find an evidence-based consultant or an evidence-based practitioner in your workplace, that is valuable because those are the persons who will engage in asking the right questions, first of all, identifying where the evidence is, collecting, corroborating it with evidence from your organization to determine how to answer that question as best as possible. So there's a huge gap in what consultants are offering, and I see it all the time. We have to be very careful about that gap. We don't want to just have the popular person come and tell us what we want to hear. Instead, we need to have proper systematic research being conducted in the workplace. So for now, this might seem still a bit surface level, but I do want to get into some specific examples after the break when we get into how to apply evidence-based management, okay? And this is not going to take us too long. I think maybe 20, 30 minutes, but I'll still take a short break now. And we'll come back to do this part, and then I'll discuss how this relates to the next few classes that we have, all right? Good. Any questions? Some excellent comments and excellent feedback in class. Really impressive stuff, guys, I must say. So let's keep it going. I'll just pause my video and audio for now, and we'll take about 10 minutes, okay? We'll be right back. Let me pause the recording as well. All right, I think that's about 10 minutes. And we can resume because, the idea is that we would finish around 4, maybe a little after 4, depending on how many questions we have, okay? So let's get into it then. I'm hoping you see how important it is to have that evidence-based mindset in OB, in management. We know about it in the rest of our lives, but as others have highlighted today, even in established fields such as medicine, for instance, there was a time when evidence-based practice wasn't the norm. Of course, I wasn't around back then. And instead, there was a lot of practice based on folk remedies and these sorts of things. That would have been many, many, many years ago. Of course, they have moved towards evidence-based practice, but even so, even with all of the scientific evidence in certain established fields, we've moved into this what we call post-truth era. What it was when Trump was president in particular, where persons started to deny evidence on things like climate change, on vaccines, and so on. And of course, we have to be very careful when we start to shift into that mindset that evidence is no longer important somehow. when scientific evidence is still the best form of evidence we have. And we could, of course, use that with other types of evidence, okay? All right. So what are these principles then? And from these principles, I will then show you how we can apply it to everything we do, to the questions we have in our course from next week, okay? So the first thing is to focus on principles where the science is clear. And this, of course, means where we have, as we said earlier today, multiple studies that have led to the establishment of good theory. Because there are going to be some areas, and a very good example is in motivation research, for instance, where I had a doctoral student who was starting the program, and in his proposal, he wrote about Maslow's theory, and I was just surprised. I said, well, Maslow and Herzberg, these are obviously theories that are not, there's not enough empirical evidence, and even the evidence we have did not support some of the propositions and so on. So why not bring up goal-setting theory? There are at least 2 good theories in motivation research, and you have not cited one. So of course, we as not just researchers, but as practitioners must also look at where the science is clear, where there's clear evidence for good theories, because those are the ones we really want to look at applying if we can, okay? That's a pretty straightforward points. One that we've covered. The second one is an interesting one because it requires an entire change in your mindset, and that is develop decision awareness in professional practice. So in other words, any decision should represent an opportunity to apply evidence. I'm not saying that every decision means you must engage in a comprehensive scientific study or you must collect data from an organization or whatnot, but try to recognize that there are opportunities to engage in evidence-based management in some form or fashion, whether it be primary data collection or secondary data collection. And it's good that I'm starting to see this happen more and more. I'll just give one example for now and some more when we get into applying this in a practical sense. So I have seen examples, for instance, even on the committee on which I work, the Industrial Relations Advisory Committee for the Ministry of Labor. I've seen them clearly trying to look at any of the questions that the minister, assigns to us, things like lessons from COVID-19 for industrial relations, and then we'll say, okay, what are the evidence? What can we draw from? And of course, I'll look at the organizational psychology research and say, okay, what lessons did we draw from COVID-19? Especially in terms of vaccination, mandatory vaccination, remote work, and all these things. But what is the evidence? What evidence do we have on an international scale as well as from locally? And it was interesting, I just said, probably just to share one or two things, maybe one of the interesting findings from the CSO and Terra Caribbean data, we don't have enough data, of course, but based on 2 fairly large studies, we found that productivity increased, right, across the board, which I found interesting because, one person raised a point that, well, remote work, we tried it, it didn't work. It didn't work. People were at home minding their babies, and they started to engage in this sort of conversation. I said, well, we have data locally from 2 fairly large studies showing quite the opposite. Productivity across the board, even in manufacturing, increased, which caught me off guard. So I said, but here's the data. And how can you refute that? How can you refute something? So no, you can't start to break down the data in its final form and say maybe in certain sectors there was an increase more so than in other sectors, whatnot. That's fantastic. But the general point stand that remote work did not necessarily fail at all. Anyway, so that was just an interesting finding from there. But we have to develop that awareness that we can't just rely on old talk and anecdotes and what our personal experiences are. That is not good. We could have practitioner experience, but we need to supplement that with harder evidence. Studies, larger scale studies, local studies, evidence from organizations, and sort of combine that. Okay. That's the kind of habits we have to get into. We can't rely on that old talk sort of thing that I hate seeing happen. All right. Diagnose underlying factors related to decisions, and that simply means asking the same questions we spoke about earlier. Not just what causes X, but under which conditions X leads to Y, or you know, under what conditions the relationship is stronger. In other words, developing good theory, right? And asking yourselves important questions. So even when you collect that evidence and you have that evidence, make sure that you start to continue to ask questions, because you may need to collect further evidence to better understand how it will work here, okay? So even if I found that, okay, during COVID-19 productivity increase, does it mean because it's remote work? Was remote work a big factor there? Now I may have to dig deeper, collect further evidence to understand why productivity increased, okay? So it may be an indication that remote work was working to some extent, but it could have been other factors as well, right? We need to investigate it deeper. Contextualized knowledge related to evidence use. And this one, of course, means asking the same questions. Will it work here? Is it worth applying it in this case? Do we need to collect further information from the organization itself? And that is that's mostly the question we would ask at that point. Develop evidence-based support simply means having that database of evidence readily available, which is not, I took a side there because we don't have that sort of database in the social sciences as yet. It exists. Cochrane collaboration, of course, they have a very strong database for medicine. Campbell collaboration, they have a very strong database for education. In the social sciences, the Academy of Management, I know they have been working on something. And I of course, they are sort of the leading outlets in our field. So I regularly attend their conferences. I know this is something that they are working on, and hopefully we can have something soon. So that might be that's just a separate point. Take this as a secondary point, okay? It's something that we will have in the future. And prepare to access new evidence. So I don't want you to think, these are not steps in a way, it's just some principles. We'll get to these steps very soon. When we have answered a question, it doesn't mean we have answered it and it stops there. Things change. New variables enter the equation. Life change. In our case, we had COVID-19, for instance, but you know, there are a lot of factors. The environment is always changing. We have to keep updated and be prepared to update ourselves, right? Update our knowledge to better understand things. Let's look at an example then, and then I'll get into some of the examples that we have for our class, right? For our course. So how do we apply it? There's a good article I posted. I would have liked to have written this on the board. But it's just some steps we go through. Usually we start with asking the right question. Asking a question with regards in relation to a practical problem, or phrasing a problem in an answerable question, is the way we apply evidence-based management. That's how it starts. It starts with a question. That is why I'm going to stop sharing this for now just to show you something else. Okay. I want to share, just 1 second. Where is it? Right, this is it. Okay. All right. So it really starts with a question. So let's get to what a question can look like. And I'll give you one example. So I asked a question: what are the antecedents to organizational commitments, and how can we use this evidence to increase employees' organizational commitment? It seems like a straightforward question, but we'll talk about it. So if we start with asking a question, we can ask a question about anything. And before I even jump into this one, I actually want to give a general example. So for instance, very recently, as in yesterday and 2 weeks ago, right? I had a local, I can't give you names, right? A local health institute, pretty big health institute, right? And a local large financial firm, that's the most I can say, right? Approached me and said, you know, hey Paul, you know, similar issue, you know, very similar issue. We need to better understand employee engagement, what is causing engagement in our firm, and how we can increase engagement. Okay. So of course my first thing is, do you know what engagement is? All right. And then we can extend the conversation from there. This is a concept we will cover in this course as well, right? So The point is, there are going to be cases where persons try to answer that question based solely on practical experience and say, absolutely, I can increase your engagement. Here's how we do it. I've used this in the past and I know it has increased employees' engagement because their experiences were positive. I know they reacted well to the program. I have the answer here. It's this training program that I run. But it's not like that, right? When you ask that question, because they're asking me a question, we know what we want. We want to increase employee engagement. So I start with first guiding them through the process of what engagement actually means. And then once they understand that, I say, well, here are the strongest predictors of engagement that we know from a few meta-analytic studies. Job demands, job resources, leadership, and one or two others I went to, right? But let's just take it to job demands, job resources. And I say, okay, if we know job demands, job resources are the strongest predictors, showing you exactly how I apply OB in everyday life, right? Strongest predictors of engagement in your workplace, and this is locally, right? Now we can look at developing certain, tools and methods to measure job demands, job resources, engagement, but ensure that we're measuring engagement properly, because before you were actually measuring commitments, satisfaction to an extent, some other concepts in there that are not phrased properly. This is some of the things you were doing before. But here's how you properly measure engagement. If you want to measure satisfaction, here's how you do it properly. If you want to measure commitment, here's how you do it properly. These are well-established instruments. But if you want to increase engagement, let's separate engagement from the rest. Let's isolate the strongest causes and now determine if there is a relationship there. And if there is, then we can get into which specific job demands and which specific job resources. Now, I simplified it there a bit. I didn't include all of the predictors, but the point is, if we adopt that evidence-based mindset, we have to start with the right question. And luckily, it's good to see some of these local institutions asking the right questions. They want to know how they can increase this or how they can improve that. But my step, of course, the step after asking the right question is to now acquire evidence to better understand how to answer that question. Now, fortunately, I've been acquiring evidence in that area since forever, right? Since the early days of my PhD and before that, right? But the point is that it's an area that I know I've been doing work on and actively been doing research on, so I was happy to address it. If it was an area outside my expertise, I might say, okay, let me consult with somebody else, but I can also still try to answer it because it's still within the field of OB. I can acquire the evidence, read about it, and be able to better explain it and understand what are the stronger predictors there. If it was an area that I wasn't entirely familiar with, right, and they give me that question, I would say, let me now acquire some evidence. And then once I acquire that evidence, I would have to appraise. So you realize it's A, ask question, A, acquire evidence, A, appraise that evidence. So that's the third A. Why do I appraise the evidence? Because the evidence can come from different sources. It can come from a peer-reviewed journal article, which is fantastic, or a peer-reviewed journal article that's a meta-analytic study. Super fantastic, right? Or it can come from an internet blog or somebody's a Reddit post. Rubbish, right? I shouldn't be using those things as my sources of evidence, really, right? Maybe they might give me some ideas, but I need to appraise where this evidence is coming from. Ideally, I want it to come from peer-reviewed meta-analytic studies from high-quality journals, not from, there's something known as predatory journals. I'm not sure if anybody here is aware of it, but there are some journals out there that will publish anything, and I have to make sure not to look at those, obviously, okay? They're usually very easy to spot, so you don't have to worry too much about that, right? Okay, so ask, acquire, appraise. Once I have appraised the evidence, I can then aggregate the evidence. And that's what I did, when I told them, I said, look, there are meta-analytic studies, and I showed them 1, 2, 3. These are 3 meta-analytic studies, not only one. And I can aggregate the findings across all to sort of synthesize what they are showing us. And in each one, job demands, job resources would have been the strongest predictors of engagement. So you see how I aggregated it. So it's all here: ask, acquire, appraise, aggregate. Once I can do that, I can begin applying. So I can start to apply the evidence. I could say, okay, maybe we gathered some evidence from your organization as well. let's apply it now. Let's see which job demands we need to reduce a bit, which job resources we may need to increase a bit, and then will likely improve your engagement. And I say likely because we're always dealing with probabilities, right? So we're trying to improve the likelihood that engagement goes up. Do I stop there once I have applied it? What should I do last? As always.
You would have to reevaluate to see if the application would have been successful or not.
Exactly. Yes, so I need to evaluate or assess, right? Evaluate or assess. Evaluation is fine. If I want to stick with the A sort of the A words, I would say assess, but evaluate is exactly what we're doing. So ask, acquire, appraise, aggregate, apply, and then assess or evaluate. So that is, I may need to evaluate whether it's working. So even if I increase some job resources and reduce some job demands, I can measure engagement after that intervention to see if it has in fact increased, right? And that is the gold standard way to show that an intervention is working. If you can do a pre-test on engagement, well, I'm just using the engagement example, right? Implement that intervention and then do a post-test on engagement. So you can say, okay, has engagement improved? All right. Of course, you can have a control group as well if you want to, but that's really the ideal. A pre-test, post-test with an intervention is what you'd want. So with that, ask, acquire, pray. All I'm asking you to do, I am doing the asking. In each class, I'm doing the asking. I'm bringing a question. This question, of course, will be the question that I ask in class. From next week, I'm coming to class and saying, okay, I am asking the question. I want you, and okay, to be fair, I have provided some readings, right? It's not to say I'm telling you to acquire all of the evidence. I did provide some readings on it, right? But I still will ask the question, what are the antecedents to organizational commitment, and how can we use this evidence to increase employees' organizational commitment, right? A question that an organization very well could come and ask me tomorrow. I won't be surprised, right? Okay. I asked the question. I provided some of the readings. So yes, you have to acquire, right? You have to acquire the evidence, but I did make it a bit easy to acquire some of it, how to increase employee commitment. It's right there. But this is just one article. You could go beyond that. You could collect data, and I'll show you how. Okay. Antecedents is simply a more correct way of saying causes. I didn't say causes because we're looking at more correlational research, okay? Antecedents or causes of organizational commitment. So you acquire the evidence, appraise it. Well, thankfully, I appraise these. They are good sources of evidence. But if you find something else, you may want to appraise it just to make sure it comes from a good quality source, a reputable outlet, okay? And then apply it to the questionnaire. You tell me, Paul, these are some of the things that cause organizational commitment, and therefore we can use that evidence to improve commitment by doing X, Y, Z. Do you understand that? Yes, no, or that's essentially what we'll be doing for each class. Same thing here. Job satisfaction. I will give a brief introduction. I'll tell you, hey, this is what job satisfaction means. And then I'll get right to the question. Say, what are the antecedents to job satisfaction? How can we use this evidence to increase employees' job satisfaction? Yes, it's a research-based question, but it's very practical because these are the exact questions organizations are asking. And locally, I am very happy to see that they are asking these questions because they're on the right track. They want to know how to improve employee outcomes, organizational behavior type outcomes. So you're not only engaged in research and in the research process, but you're seeing how to do it in a very practical way, because these are the things they're looking for. Yeah, so these are the two questions. And of course, then I have the group presentation here. While I provide some of the readings here in terms of acquiring, if you want to acquire additional evidence, so let's say you go to the group question here. Do you think I give you a few things to discuss. Do you think younger and older employees, people are similar in what makes them happy at work and or what makes them committed to their companies? Let's take a look at that one. Right? And you said, okay, well, I want to do some, Paul gave me the question. So a good question. And I say, let's go to Google Scholar, right? Not my profile. Let's just go to Google Scholar. right? And you said, okay, job satisfaction and what was it? Age, right? Demographic differences, yeah, age. Age. So I go to Google Scholar and I say, wow, job satisfaction age, 1982. I don't think that would be that relevant for us. Okay, this is the year I was born. So maybe I might want to take a glance at it, but I might want to customize my range and say, let's look at maybe from 2014 to now. Say, okay, time, gender, age, and pharmacists' job satisfaction, effects of gender and age on pride in work and job satisfaction. So here we have Journal of Happiness Studies. This is a well-respected journal with a publication in 2015. I'm not going to ask you to engage in a thesis or write anything comprehensive, but if you read one article outside of what I have assigned and it says you read about it here and then you say, okay, great. Let's just get it. Age. Cross-sectional telephone survey. But you can read about the methods, appraise equality in the methods and so on, and then realize there is a gender difference here, which I did ask about as well. Are there any differences in gender, right? So you might find the answer for 2 questions in our one paper, and you want to read a bit more about it, okay? So you find that and you said, well, oh man, it's behind a paywall. What do I do, right? Well, you can go to UV links, and of course, you may not get it there. So what you may want to do is just cite this article, copy the DOI, and go to UV links, wink, wink, UV links, copy and paste the DOI. And there you go, you know, this is very important. This is very useful for when you're doing your thesis as well. To have this database, Sci-Hub is, I mean, UV links is fantastic. So you can go ahead, you get the full article, and you can read about it, highlight the age part if you want, right? Definitely very helpful. So I know this is recorded, so if anybody listens to it, they know it's UV links we're talking about, right, guys? Good, good. All right, so very useful technique to use when you want to just read one additional article outside the assigned readings to answer your group question. I'm not asking you to do too much. I don't think it's I don't want it to be too onerous. I just want you to have that idea that you can, I can ask the question just to make it a bit easier. I could have asked you to ask your own question. In fact, in the past, I did ask students, give me a question you want to ask about job attitudes, and I will give you that question for your assignment. But nobody ever asked the questions in the past. Not one person ever proposed the question. So that's why I said, okay, I'll give the questions. You acquire the evidence, even though I provided a lot of it. Maybe just acquire one additional article for the group project. 1 or 2 would be great. Appraise it, make sure it comes from a reputable outlet. Once you see a good publisher like Springer, Sage, Taylor and Francis, now there's of course a better, you can look at more fine-grained approaches, but these are fine, right? All of these are fine. Aggregate the data. Now, I'm not asking you to engage in any high degree of aggregation. Of course, it's just for the group project. For your literature review, though, you may need to aggregate and synthesize a lot more. For the group presentation, I'm not asking you to do that in any great deal. I'm just asking you to present on your findings. Okay? All right, sorry, let me go back to it. Right? So there we have it. That is how we are using this evidence-based mindset, and that's kind of the approach I want you to adopt going forward. Whether it be, you know, for this course, any other course, or if you plan to be at some point a consultant, fantastic. You know, take away my little business that I have. That's fine. But you now know how I do it and what is the best way to do it actually, right? There are too many charlatans in the field of consultancy, as Omar Bitsi rightfully highlighted. You know, persons who rely solely on personal experiences to answer such complex questions rather than engaging in a more comprehensive search and systematic approach, what we call systematic approach to answering these questions. So hopefully you can see how this enhances your decision quality. All right. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
and I hope it doesn't throw you off guard.
Not at all, not at all.
My question is, what is the evidence
For
that
evidence.
evidence-based
Fantastic.
works?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. In fact, I posted a reading on it for you. Let me show you. I'll point to it. There are at least 3 or 4 studies. A fantastic question, Oman Beats. I'm happy to hear that you're asking that question in particular. The evidence for evidence-based management. Such a good question. It shows a high level of thinking. And what I'll do, let me send you a link for it because I do have it here in my folder. And there are more than 4 studies. I just highlighted 4 of them in that reading for you to show you the evidence for evidence-based management. But it's a pretty big folder. But let me highlight it for you after, right? I'll come back to that one and I'll highlight the paper for you. I posted it on our readings, but I want to highlight which one it is. Okay. Let me come back to that one. Yeah, and even if we look to there's of course good evidence, sound evidence on the use of evidence-based management, but there's also some less direct evidence. So you get cases where persons have done studies of organizations that practice it versus organizations that have not been practicing evidence-based management in the Fortune 500, comparing their profitability. So those aren't as direct, but then there are some more direct studies of it. So I want to point you in that direction, of course. Very good question to ask. Yeah, any other questions? That's a good question. Yes, I will post the recording, absolutely, yeah. I actually thought I had that right here with me in Ogmang. I'm sorry, I didn't have it. I thought I had it right here next to me and it's not. All right. Yep. Any other questions? I have a question pertaining to the groups. Sure, go ahead. Jahani.
Hi, sir. I
Hi.
saw that you put up the groups with chargers and forgers. How do we know which one is group one? Because I saw you have like group one presenting.
All right, let me see an overview. Okay, yes, I would have created the groupings. Let me pull that up. Good. Okay, but so is it okay if we close off any questions pertaining to the course, or can we discuss these sort of housekeeping things? Any questions pertaining to the class itself, or can we move on to the housekeeping issues? Anything you want clarified? All right. Okay. All right, good. Okay. No questions. All right. Yeah. So the way I was going about it is I was actually asking the Avengers to go first, Brute Force to go second. Let me just double check because I want to make sure I didn't change it on here. So we have the course, right? Yeah, so we have the presentation. Did I put it in groups? Let me just double check. Right. 5 class discussion questions. No groups. Okay. So yeah. Let me I think I posted it on latest news, but maybe I need to change it. Oh, you're right. I didn't put thank you for asking that question. That's a good question. I made the assumption, but it's actually a horrible assumption. So what I was going to ask was the order of the groups present here. And I think what I did is I posted something in latest news, didn't I? Or was it in the group presentation? Right. I posted in group presentation on Discord, and I think I posted this on my learning as well, didn't I? Or let me just double check. Announcements, yeah. Okay, so it would have been so no, I did it. Okay. Phew. I thought I didn't do it. All right. So yeah, Avengers will be presenting first on attitudes and job satisfaction. I am, of course, being extremely lenient. I posted the rubric for you all to see on the marking rubric for the group project. Let me show you. That is group video rubric for group presentation. And what you can do is click here to submit your group presentation each week, right? So we have a different group each week. For next week, we have the Avengers. And the Avengers, of course, you would see your group here with Michelle, Shanice, Nadia, and so on. What I could do is create a separate channel in Discord if you want for each group. So that way, if you want to exchange information in your group, you can do that, or you can simply exchange numbers and create a WhatsApp group. I don't know what you prefer. If you want to exchange your numbers, or if you want to just reach out in general, what do you all prefer? I'm leaving it up to you all to decide. If everyone is in Discord, what you can do is just reach out WhatsApp. Okay. What you can do is just reach out in Discord in general and say, hey, let's exchange some numbers. We're in the same group. Yeah, simpler. Okay. Already created WhatsApp. All right, great. Thank you for the feedback. We have WhatsApp groups. Awesome. Okay. Awesome. Excellent. So the first group of Avengers you will be presenting next week only on the presentation question. Huh? Remember, the rest of the class, we still have to work on the presentation for the 2 questions. So essentially, what that means is that next week, group 1 is only presenting this as a video. It's not even going to be in class. They're presenting the video. I'm reviewing it and posting it, and I'm putting it here for our discussion offline. In class, we are going to spend 1 hour each on these 2 questions as a class. So the group presentation is an offline sort of thing. It's not to say I'm adding it to class and class is going to be that final hour. It doesn't make sense. We can do it offline. All right. So I'll post it there online. You all, however, you submit to me here. Okay. Each week, the different groups you submit to me here. I will receive your submission. I will post it here and organize the that in this forum here for the rest of the class to see. But in class, we as a class, we always prepare to discuss the 2 questions for each class, okay? 2 questions each class following that evidence-based mindset. All right? So next week, we have the Avengers who will be doing attitudes and job satisfaction. Now, I may briefly talk about it in class, just in general, just to give you an idea. I don't want to just throw you into the questions, right? So I'll briefly talk about it in class, and then we'll get into the questions. And that will be the same format for each week. Personality and values by brute force the week after. Because you are being tasked to submit your video within 1 week, I am obviously going to be extremely lenient in evaluating your video using the rubric. That's the first group, the Avengers. So yes, I know it's a short time frame, but I will be, this is what I've done in the past. I've been extremely lenient in evaluating your video. Similarly, for brute force, I will be lenient in marking your video because you are given 2 weeks. But once we've passed those first 2 weeks, I'll just be using the rubric as normal. Okay? Don't worry, forgers. Omavit says you scratch it, you're like, oh God, but the final group is going to be hard. No, absolutely not. In fact, given your feedback today, I think I need to be hard on you. I'm just kidding. Your feedback was excellent. You're doing great questions. No, I'll be using the rubric as normal. It's fine, right? Any questions on the group assignment or the questions that you're assigned? Yes.
So I want to ask,
Sure.
for the questions we're assigned,
Yes.
are the readings there? Just trying to.
Yeah, okay, no problem. All right, so to an extent. Now I may provide a reading or 2, but I really want you for the group presentation to go beyond that, to maybe get 1 or 2 additional readings. If you can supplement it with 1 or 2 additional readings, that enhances your presentation, gives it a bit extra oomph, and it just shows that you're following the same steps we did today, because you're acquiring some information, appraising it, applying it to the question. I just kind of want to get you in the habit of applying that evidence-based management approach. So yeah, 1 or 2 additional readings, that's all I'm asking.
All right.
Good, yeah. Any other question? Thank you, Omangwitse. That may be a question that people had as well. Please.
All right, good day, Dr. Paul. Today would have been my first session.
Okay.
I actually got mixed up. I actually went to UWI, thinking the class was in UWI, and then end up coming back home
Oh,
and joining online.
God.
But I don't know what group I'm in, or if I was assigned to any.
Right.
So,
Collis. So yeah, okay, Collis. Anybody else is not in a group and in class today?
I am not in a group, so
But DeAndre, you reached out to me already, right? Not so?
yeah.
Yeah, I think I placed you in Omar Beats' group as well, So let me see. I was waiting for I knew that a few persons would be joining today, right? And therefore, even though we even as 3 for now, I thought we may have had 3 to 4 actually. So Collis, because brute force has some work to do, I was actually thinking about adding you. I didn't want to. I know Avengers may have already started. Brute force though, would it be okay if I add a member to your group? Given the shorter time frame, I was hoping it could help. I do have Aisha, Danila, Anika. Would that be okay?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, Collis, so I'll need you to communicate with them. And let me add you to that group. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Okay, okay, all right. I saw the replies. Thank you. And then we have somebody else replied. Who was the next person who joined us today? Devin.
Yes, sir.
All right, Devin.
Yeah, I wasn't there last week, so I need the group to.
Okay, Devin. Thank you. All right, so Devin, I would like to add you to charges if that's okay with the rest of the charges group for now. I know it's only the early stages. So if you're okay with that, Shania, Shanande, Jane, anyone? Okay. All right. So let me add Devin. All right, to your group. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So I was hoping we could go max 4. So this is good. For now, so I think we should be anybody else, or is that it? Okay, so Devin, reach out to them. You're both, Collis and yourself, you're both in good groups, you're in good hands. I know the persons in these 2 groups and they are excellent. So reach out to them, get their contact and get started on that presentation project. Okay. It's not, if you look at the rubric, I simplify that rubric as much as I can. I didn't want the group presentation to be overly complex. I wanted it to be something that you engage in the evidence-based management approach, you apply it in a presentation format, and maybe even raise some questions. I would love to see that, based on your presentation, maybe you raise some questions from what you have presented, which gives the class the opportunity to answer those questions. That would be fantastic. So I really look forward to seeing what you can raise in the presentations. Of course, knowing that Avengers and Brute Force, they are under strict, sort of tight deadlines. So I'm not being as expecting that much in terms of what you can accomplish in a short time frame. That said, of course, please, if you can raise a question or two, it would be good.
I
All
said
right.
I don't think I'm yet in a group. I'm not seeing myself placed in a group.
You're not, let me check,
No.
because I thought I did. Let me double check. Oh, I thought I placed you here. It's Venetia I placed. Sorry, Deandra.
No problem. And
all right.
thanks.
Yeah, sorry about that. Darius, Shanice, Afia, would it be okay if I add Deandra to your group?
Sure, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So Deandra, please reach out to them. Shanice, fantastic. You're in good hands in this group, and definitely reach out to them and join their WhatsApp group. Okay, so you can message them directly in Zoom today and make that contact. All right. Any other questions pertaining to the class? Any sort of housekeeping things we have to take care of?
This list of group members.
Yeah.
I struggle. The one that I see on the announcement is what you have now. It's so faint. Is there a
You mean the difference?
yeah, the people who are in my group or something.
Oh, right. Okay, so that would have been today actually. Omabitse. So the one I posted an announcement would have been when I formed them, but
Yeah.
after today, there's
Okay.
one other person because I don't want you to have a group of two, right?
Okay.
And there would have been one other person who joined the course,
Yes.
right? Let me just show you that really quickly. So yeah, that would have been, I believe, Venetia, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I added it today to the group. And sorry, thanks for reminding me. So Venetia, if you're here she's not here today, is she?
Okay.
I think, oh, she reached out to me via email, Omabitse. So
Okay.
what I can do is I'll ask her to contact the group because she is unfortunately able to make, I think, 3 classes
Oh,
because of her work schedule, but she really wants to get started on it.
okay. I'm already in touch with her. I have her number, I think.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions? Anything at all? All right. With regards to the literature review, has anyone had a chance as yet to take a look at the guidelines? I know many persons may not have done a literature review before. I want to just say I am rethinking something because this is more housekeeping, housekeeping again, right? Just knowing that this is the first semester, and I have never taught this course in the first semester before, I've always had you all in the second semester when you would have already done a literature review for Rian, Dr. Singh, right? And that experience, I've kind of relied on that to just supplement it with some guidelines. But knowing now that it's first semester, I may need to provide a bit more guidance on writing that literature review. So it's just trying to find the time for it. You know, we have our classes scheduled already. Do you want me to maybe, set aside a 20 minutes after one of our classes, one day we can do it? Let me know, because we can do that. It's fine with me. It might just mean staying until a 4:20 or 4:30. Yeah, okay. Well, we can do that, right? And maybe Omar would say you will sponsor the drinks for staying back after class that day. All right.
That's fine. Too much money. Yeah, certainly.
Okay. All right. We'll do it there. We'll do that. Let me see. It's due. Before that, take a look at this article for me, Undertaking a Literature Review. And then what we'll do is maybe I'm looking for a week, maybe after the first 2 classes, because the literature review will be due. If I just go to the course calendar, right, it opens on the 17th, due on the 21st. Okay, so if we can schedule it for, how time flies. Let's say okay, maybe the 8th then, maybe the 8th would be okay. All right, let me put that in my calendar, right? And what I want you to do for me, because I'm giving you some time to just review that document, is in the meantime, just review that document for me and this undertaking a literature review, and bring any questions to that class. Because after that class, we'll cut off the class and then we'll say, okay, let's take 5 minutes break and then start to cover any questions you have on the literature review. I'll go through the general process of writing a literature review. I'll bring some examples of my own literature reviews if you want. I can print that's no problem. Or I can just share it on Discord, that might be easier, save the trees. And then go through just, the process, the stages, and address the questions, because it should be based a lot on your questions. So when you read that document, really write down any questions. There are no silly questions. Bring them all, and let's go through that and spend some time answering them in our class, okay? So hopefully that can help, knowing that it's a very different semester. Sorry for that oversight. Okay. Any other questions? That was one that I thought of, but it wasn't a question, but I know it was something from last week that stood out to me, and I said, okay, this is why. Questions, concerns? Well, happy Republic Day, by the way. I should have started class with that, so I hope you all enjoy the weekend. Do something patriotic. Maybe I see Shanice is wearing a beautiful red t-shirt today, so that's good, celebrating Republic Day. Shanice, hit me. Your microphone is on. We didn't hear you, but
Well, so I had no correlation. It's just
no correlation. The correlation was 0. I like it. All right. But nonetheless, enjoy the weekend. I think the class is a productive one. Thanks for the feedback during class. I hope you can rest and digest now, right? Think about what we learned and how you can apply it going forward. And I really look forward to seeing how you apply this going forward. Okay. So thank you all for the contributions, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, bye everyone. Have a good weekend.
You too.
you also.
Bye, sir.
Bye.
Okay, see you later. Bye bye.